Is lye dangerous? What's the difference between cold process, hot process and melt and pour? Which oils should I use for my soap? Can I use tap water instead of distilled water? What temperature should I mix my oils and lye solution at? Do I need preservatives? These are the questions every soap maker asks, and here's the problem. You go online and you will find completely different answers from different vlogs and different videos. So today we're gonna break everything down and make it simple and easy for you. By the end of this video, you will know what lye is, why do you need it, and how to handle it with safety. Then we will know what's the difference between cold process, hot process and melt and pour, and which one is best for beginners. My favorite one, you're gonna learn which oils you actually need, and spoiler alert, you do not need 17 oils. You can literally make many different soap products and skincare products with only 4. Why distilled water matters, how temperature will allow you to have way better control over your soap making and your soap butter, and whether or not you need preservatives for a long-lasting soap. Let's start with the question that scares people the most. Is lye dangerous? Yes. Lye is caustic. It can burn your skin. But here's the full truth. Lye is dangerous the same way a kitchen knife is dangerous. If you handle it correctly and if you follow the safety rules, it's completely manageable. So what is actually lye? Lye, also called sodium hydroxide, is what converts oils and butters into soap. Let's take an example. Coconut oil contains high concentration of lauric and myristic acid. So lauric and myristic acid will react with sodium hydroxide to produce sodium laurate and sodium myristate. And sodium laurate and sodium myristate, when dissolved in water, they will create this beautiful, thick and rich lather. Here's one of the most important things you should know. Once lye reacts with oils in the saponification reaction, it's completely gone. So there's no lye left in the final product, if you do everything correctly. Thousands of years ago, people did not have pure sodium hydroxide or pure lye. So what they used to do is that they would mix water with wood ash, and then they would filter out the liquid and they would get a very concentrated water solution that contained potassium hydroxide. Now potassium hydroxide is also another different type of base like sodium hydroxide, which leads to more liquid and more paste-like soap. So that's how they used to make soap thousands of years ago, by using this potassium hydroxide from wood ash and mixing it with animal fat to produce traditional soap. So let's talk about the non-negotiable rules when using lye. Number 1, wear protective gear. This is gloves, goggles, and always be in a very well ventilated area. You can also have long sleeves just to be sure. So if you're making lye at home and you want to make it in a well ventilated space, you can either make it in the kitchen under the ventilation, or you can take it outside in the garden so that you don't inhale any of the fumes that are produced when lye is added in water. Now let's talk about the second non-negotiable rule. Always add lye in water, never the other way around. Now, when you add lye in the water, you're creating a lye solution. If you add water to the lye, you will create a very highly concentrated lye solution that will create a lot of fumes. So you should always make sure you add the lye in the water to avoid a very strong exothermic reaction. If you want to ask me what's the absolutely safest way to make lye solution, I would say is by freezing water into ice cubes and using that as your lye water. So basically you take distilled water, you freeze it in the freezer, and then you have ice cubes, and then you add lye in the ice cubes. In that way, there is not a lot of heat being produced. This is particularly important when you're working with juices or with milks, like coconut milk or goat milk. When you work with these, you really have to make sure you freeze them or you keep them very cold, and you add your sodium hydroxide very, very slowly to avoid any highly exothermic reaction. So here's the takeaway. Lye is dangerous, it's caustic, but if you follow the safety rules and you do everything correctly when measuring your oils and how much lye you should add, then it's completely manageable. Let's go to the second question, and the second question I get asked a lot. So, cold process, hot process, and melt and pour. What's the difference and which one should I use? So let's start with the first one, my favorite one. So cold process, you mix your oils and sodium hydroxide lye solution together, and then you let the saponification reaction happen naturally without applying any heat. Oils and lye solution will react together, and when they react, they will naturally produce some heat that will speed up the saponification reaction, create a gel phase, and slowly will turn into soap. Now, the cold process technique takes around 4 to 6 weeks to cure. So you make your soap, you pour it into the mold, you wait 24 hours, you take it out of the mold, and then you cut it, you let it cure for around 4 to 6 weeks. During those 4 to 6 weeks, the main thing that happens is that all the water that you added in your water solution will slowly evaporate. So if you literally weigh your soap before and after, you will see a big difference. At the same time, during the first days, oils are converted into soap, and then the majority of curing is basically water evaporation, where your bar becomes more long-lasting, firmer, and then after 4 to 6 weeks, it's perfect to use. Now, what are the pros of cold process soap? The pros are that you have a lot of control, you can do a lot of color swirls, because you can create a very liquid batch, you can separate it into multiple batches and add different colors in each batch and then mix them together. You get a very nice smooth design and overall a very nice long-lasting soap with beautiful colors. And the cons is that you just need to wait. You need patience, you need to wait at least 4 to 6 weeks for normal soap, and if you're making a soap with a high concentration of olive oil, you actually need to wait minimum 6 months for it to cure. Let's talk about hot process soap. So hot process soap, just like cold process soap, you mix your oils and lye solution together, but then you actually cook it. So you apply heat for the saponification reaction to happen fast. So speed is very important here. You apply heat, and when you apply heat, the water evaporates, oils turn into soap, and you have a soap that you can use the next day. Here are the pros of hot process soap. The pros are that you have basically soap that you make with your own oils, how you control it, ready the next day. The cons are that you get a very rough texture and you can really not work with a lot of different colors. And now let's talk about the last one, melt and pour soap. I hear this all the time, and honestly, melt and pour soap is beautiful for children and beginners, but the problem is you're not making soap. The pros of melt and pour soap is that you do not handle sodium hydroxide or lye, and that's why it's safe for beginners and children. Basically, you take a soap base that is already soap, it's already reacted to become soap, you melt it down, and then you add your additives, essential oils, colorants, whatever, you pour it into the mold, and then you take it out, and it's also ready the next day. The cons of melt and pour soap is that you have no control over your soap. You're basically reheating somebody else's work. It's not soap making. So when people tell me, oh, I made soap, and they say, and I say, how did you make it? And they say melt and pour. Well, this is not soap making. You basically take somebody else's work, you melt it down, you add essential oils, and then you pour it into the mold and you have soap to use, but you didn't make it from scratch. So you have very, very little control, and I wouldn't actually regard it as soap making. I'm sorry. The takeaway, cold process, it's beautiful, but it needs patience. Hot process is fast and rustic. Melt and pour, it's very fun and safe, but it's not soap making. Quick pause. If you want a beginner soap making recipe that is balanced, cleansing, conditioning, and creamy at the same time, comment soap and I'll send it to you. It also contains some troubleshooting and an amazing essential oil blend that is long lasting and that you will absolutely love it. Let's go to the third question. And this one I get it all the time. It's about formulation. Which oils should I choose? And now I would like to tell you a story that when I started soap making, my first soap was with palm oil. And then I gave it to a friend of mine and she told me, Perry, this is amazing. What's inside? And I said, oh, there is palm oil inside. And she was like, oh, I don't want to use that. I said, why? Because palm oil is not sustainable. So then I tried to find different types of recipes and I found one with shea butter and cocoa butter. Then I used that, it worked perfectly fine until my supplier stopped supplying cocoa butter. So I switched completely from cocoa butter to something else. And then I ended up buying a lot of different oils the first year of soap making. And I wasted a lot of money on that, and I don't want the same for you. And I want to show you that you actually don't need 17 different oils to make soap. You literally need 4 oils to make soap and 5 if you want to feel fancy. So here are the big 4. Number 1, coconut oil. Coconut oil is rich in lauric acid and myristic acid, and it's what will add bubbles to your soap and a beautiful lather. The sweet spot is around 25 to 30% if you're gonna use it for your hands and body. Some people who might have sensitive skin, they will want to minimize that or remove it completely. And then if you're making a soap for the dishes that needs to be very cleansing, you will want to increase the coconut oil concentration up to 95 or even 100%. Olive oil, and this is one of my favorite ones. Now, why? Why do I say this? Olive oil contains oleic acid. When it reacts with sodium hydroxide, it gives sodium oolate. Sodium oolate is what will provide a lot of conditioning properties to your soap. It's absolutely amazing. And if you make a soap with a high concentration of olive oil, like the Castille or Aleppo soap, you might want to cure it for a very long time because olive oil takes a long time to be converted into soap. So if you use it earlier than you should, it will feel very slimy in the shower. But here's why olive oil is very important. And this is perhaps one of the most essential things that you should know about choosing the right oils. Now, there are a lot of different oils that contain oleic acid and linoleic acid, just like olive oil. We have avocado oil, sunflower oil, rapeseed oil, and so on. So you might ask, is it better to use avocado oil in the soap? Well, technically, they are very similar to each other. Avocado oil and olive oil, they basically have oleic acid and linoleic acid. The thing is, avocado oil contains some extra nutrients, some extra vitamins and antioxidants that olive oil do not contain. And here's the truth. Those vitamins and those antioxidants actually, they cannot really survive saponification. They cannot really survive the alkaline environment during saponification where you have pH above 10, 11 when the reaction happens. So in those high pH levels, basically all those nutrients, vitamins and antioxidants, they are completely degraded. So is it really worth it to actually add avocado oil in your soap? Well, not really. It mainly adds a lot of cost because it's way more expensive than olive oil. Of course, if you're very careful, you can have a bit of avocado oil staying raw in the superfat, but still, that's very, very, very small amounts. So the sweet spot of olive oil is around 35 to 40% concentration in a normal soap that needs 4 to 6 weeks of curing. Let's go to the third ingredient, shea butter. Now, shea butter is high in stearic acid and palmitic acid, and it will give creaminess to your soap. It gives creaminess and structure, and it's very similar to cocoa butter, so you can actually completely substitute cocoa butter to shea butter. And then the fourth oil, castor oil. Now, castor oil is high in ricinoleic acid, and what castor oil does is that it adds a lot of thickness to your lather. So basically, coconut oil will add bubbles, and then castor oil works perfectly fine with coconut oil, and it will add a lot of thickness and richness to your lather. Now, the trick with castor oil is that you can only add around 5 to 6%. If you add more, your soap might get a bit sticky. Now let's go to question number 4. Can I make soap with tap water? Yes, you can. You can absolutely make soap with tap water. And thousands of years ago, people did not use pure distilled water to make soap. But if you want to start your own soap business, and if you want consistency over your soap batches, then you have to choose distilled water. Why is that? Tap water contains a lot of metals and minerals like calcium, magnesium, iron, chlorine, and sometimes even fluoride. All of these can react with the oils and lye and interfere with saponification reaction. And not only that, but the tap water consistency changes from day to day, so you will always get a different soap afterwards. You will also have troubles with soap scum because these metals and minerals actually contribute to creating the soap scum that we see a lot on bathroom sinks and the bathroom shower. So overall, I highly recommend having consistency over your soap butters and choosing distilled water. It's the same thing when I tell people to buy refined shea butter instead of unrefined shea butter, because unrefined shea butter changes from batch to batch, and it also comes with a very strong odor that will interfere with your essential oils and fragrances, and that's not very desirable. Question number 5. What temperature should I mix my oils and lye solution in? I love this question, and this is very important, especially if you're working with color swirls and you want to separate your batch in many different batches and add different colors in it. So, have you ever heard of trace acceleration? Trace acceleration is when you add your oils and your lye together, you mix them, and in a matter of seconds it has solidified and thickened so fast that you don't have time to pour it into the mold. It's very, very annoying, and it can happen for many different reasons. It can happen because of some essential or fragrance oil that accelerate trace. It can happen because you have a very high lye concentration in your lye solution, and it can happen because you're mixing your oils and lye solution at high temperatures. So what you want to do is mix your oils and lye solution at a low similar temperature. I like to use around 28 to 30 degrees Celsius. When you do that, you will have way more control over your soap butter. You will separate it into different batches and it will still be liquidy. You will have time to add your essential oils, your powders, your micas, everything, and blend them easily together. So I highly recommend mixing in very low similar temperatures so that you have more time and more control over your soap butter. And question number 6. Do I need preservatives when I make cold process soap? No, you don't. If you're making solid cold process soap with sodium hydroxide, you do not need preservatives, because cold process solid soap is naturally self-preservative, which is because of the high pH values. So you have a pH of 9.5 when you make cold process soap, and in those high pHs there is no microbial growth. Also, you have very low water activity because the majority of the water, almost all of the water actually, evaporates during curing, so you're left with something that has a high pH, low water activity, not a good environment for microbes to grow. And that's what makes cold process so beautiful, no preservatives needed. But if you're making liquid cold process soap with potassium hydroxide, then you add water to that. And because you add water, you know the rule, where there is water, there is microbial growth. And there you will have to add some preservative. There are a lot of great preservatives out there that are also organic and certified. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. If you like this video, please comment and subscribe. If you want to know more about soap making and different skincare recipes, I have an ebook that contains 15 tested recipes from soap for the body, hands, face, dishes, floor. I have different shampoo and conditioner bar recipes, hand creams, and so on, troubleshooting, and people have been loving it so far, and I would also love to hear your feedback on that ebook. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.